What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that always delivers the best guests in true crime. And if you want to know anything about Alec Murdaugh and what's happening in South Carolina, no three better guests than these who I am about to introduce. But first, we all know by now that Alec Murdaugh went from prominent South Carolina attorney to convicted killer living in ignominy. You have to Google that word, a word my dad taught me when I was a youngster. And now he's facing even more criminal charges as he sits in a South Carolina prison with no way out. Best guests. Eric Bland, the handsome man with the good hair. He was selected for inclusion in the South Carolina Super Lawyers for 100 years, dating back to 1895. He is a super lawyer in professional liability. He was one of two in the entire state of South Carolina to have that honor. And he also happens to be representing Gloria Satterfields' family, the Murdaugh housekeeper who died after a fall down a flight of stairs, which Alec Murdaugh said had to do with some dogs, which now he says doesn't have to do with some dogs. And we don't know what the story will be tomorrow, but we're going to get to all that. And Eric, of course, also hosts Cup of Justice, a true crime podcast. Aimee Zmroczek, give her a big round of applause virtually. She is the owner of A.J.Z law firm and had another not guilty win today. She focuses, of course, on criminal defense. And she's also been voted a member of Super Lawyers. She just dates back to 1929. She's not as old as Eric Bland. And then you've got the youngest of the bunch, Amy Lawrence Lovely. Actually, I have no idea how old you are. And, of course, Aimee Zmroczek's dog. Amy Lawrence Lovely fights for the civil rights of the wrongfully accused every day. She is passionate. You should have heard her off camera. I had to rein her in because the
George
algorithm.
Carlin. She's
Yes.
George Carlin. Seven words you can't say on TV.
She said them all right before we went on TV. As I always have to say, she was on MTV's Teen Mom 2, and she appeared on Dr. Phil. I don't think she loves when I say that.
I was on Dr. Phil too, Amy.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
The Dr. Phil crew. Quick notes. You can follow us on Facebook, Insight. I post all the show times on Twitter at Podcast STS. You can also listen to us anywhere you listen to podcasts. We are switching audio platforms. Been a couple of questions about that. We're going to get that done next week. Patreon and YouTube members are welcome. And believe it or not, the merch store is open with a direct link on YouTube. Without further ado, welcome one and all.
Good evening.
Eric Bland, I was talking to you. You've had an exhausting couple of weeks. On Wednesday, the fun has not stopped for Alec Murdaugh. He's in a state prison, but he was indicted on 22 new financial fraud charges. You were expecting this. Was everyone else expecting it?
I wasn't expecting it so quickly because the feds have always wanted to be a backstop to what happened in state court. And I thought that they would go forward with some of the state cases against him, but they must have been concerned about some statute of limitations issues that they brought these charges because their concern was if Alex wasn't convicted of murder, that he would go down and plead guilty in federal court and then end up doing his time in federal prison. And he is not going to be doing his time in a federal prison. They want him to do his time in the big house. So now that he's been convicted of murder, the federal charges are coming, and they'll come in droves. He's got income tax evasion coming, and he's got a lot more charges coming against him for all the other people that he stole money from. Not just the Satterfields, not just the Pickneys, but there's a whole bunch more. Corey Fleming, on the other hand, who was also indicted on Wednesday and pled guilty today, he is going to do his time in a federal prison, even though that he has pending state charges against him because he's agreed to cooperate. I believe that he's going to end up doing his time in a federal prison and the state charges are going to be dropped. But it depends on his level of cooperation and what he's going to do. I think he's going to have to give some significant cooperation on other cases that he worked with Alex on, not just the Satterfield case. Alex also, Dick Harpootlian said after indictments came down, the federal indictments, that he doesn't believe these cases are going to be tried because Alex is now starting to talk. Alex, it's hard for you to believe Alex because he's a serial liar. He's already been admitted on the stand of being a liar and a thief. He's admitted that he's lied to his clients. So he's committed multiple frauds on a lot of different courts over the past 2 years. And now all of a sudden he's saying that I'm going to start telling the truth, meaning that, Gloria never fell because of the dogs. He made that story up. He doesn't know how she fell. And now all of a sudden he's going to say, he's going to start singing, and presumably against other lawyers, possibly people in his firm, because I heard he's pretty pissed off at some of the testimony of Ronnie Crosby and Mark Ball at the murder trial. So any allegiance that he had to his firm, he's kind of, sitting in his cell stewing. And then the other thing is, will he turn on some judges? So he does hold a lot of information. The question is it credible information? For Alex to be believed, it's not going to be based solely on his word. He's going to actually have to prove, come forward with proof. And so in our case, he killed the only 2 other witnesses to Gloria's fall. He killed Maggie and he killed Paul, and they've already given statements as to that the dogs did cause her fall. But now he's come forward after giving a confession of judgment for $4.3 million to the Satterfields and saying, I made it all up. I committed a fraud on a number of courts. You got to let me out of my confession of judgment now. The problem is there's a evidentiary rule of law called spoliation of evidence, and he killed the only 2 witnesses. You can't kill the only 2 witnesses and now come into court and say, I'm going to tell you the truth, but there's no other proof. No proof. He didn't do it in an affidavit. He didn't do it under oath. His lawyers did it. So it's been a busy couple weeks.
That would have any weight if he did do it under oath, right?
Right.
Aimee Lawrence Lovely. So, by the way, for those who don't know, Corey Fleming, 54 years old. He's a personal injury attorney that was working with Alec Murdaugh behind the scenes to siphon off this money. And we'll get back to Eric about how exactly they were doing that. But as Eric just mentioned, he pled guilty in a courtroom today, and looks like he will be heading to, as Eric said, a federal prison. But Aimee Lawrence,
I wouldn't be surprised if he's disbarred within 48 hours, like Alex was disbarred after I got the confession of judgment in May of last year. Alex was disbarred in 48 hours. I think Corey's going to be pleading to a felony. I think he's going to be disbarred.
How much time is he going to spend, Corey Fleming?
I think based on the questions from Judge Gergel and how disgusted he was at Corey Fleming today, I think he's going to get close to 3 to 4 years.
Wow, man, money does crazy things to people. You don't have to go further than Alec Murdaugh to see that. Cindy Woodburn, keep the creep in state prison, no club fed for him, and then followed here by Intervisions. He's already been convicted of first-degree murder. It's unlikely that he'll be incarcerated in a federal prison. So, but Aimee Lawrence Lovely, what is this insanity about? He had the story that the dogs caused Gloria Satterfield's trip down the stairs. Obviously, Eric helped her recoup a lot of money, which the family never saw, which is why this is all going on.
From other parties.
From other parties, yeah. Insurance companies.
Not from Alex, not from Nautilus Insurance Company that Alex stole all his money from, or Lloyd's of London. These are other parties for other claims.
It's so convoluted. I told Eric, for full disclosure, I'm trying to wrap my head around this, and I've been Kobergering, to use that as a verb, over the last couple of weeks. But Aimee, why in the hell should we believe anything Alec Murdaugh says? And does this make you question the whole Satterfield fall and what really went down? No pun intended, but I guess there's a pun.
It didn't make me question the Satterfield fall at all. You know what it makes me do? The first thing I literally hopped on here, you guys, before we got going, and I looked at Eric and I said, I'm not going to say what I said, but I'm going to give
Please don't.
I'm going to give you a version. I said that was not about trying to come forward and tell the truth or whatever. It was all about, and it wasn't about screwing over. See, there's me, like, using my better language.
That's better. Yes.
The Satterfield family. It was all personal, and it was directed straight at Eric Bland. That was like
it was 24 pages of rant against me.
They wanted to hurt you as much as possible. And they felt like the only way, the best way they could do that is to act like this didn't happen. And then like they want to try to claw back that whatever $4 million. That's what it all boils down to.
Amy Lawrence, before we go to Aimee Z, just expand on that a little bit more. So it's your contention, and I think many, that Dick Harpootlian and Jim Griffin trying to get a little payback for Eric Bland. Is that what you're saying? By
100% believe that. I represent victims.
It's going to get him sued.
Get
him sued. I'm bringing them in. They're going to be nailed for abuse of process.
Pockets, and I hope you hit them real hard.
Eric, hold on a sec. This all kinds of stuff is flying already. So you're gonna sue Harpootlian and Griffin. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, for abuse of process and frivolous proceedings sanctioned act when we win the motion.
And for those who are not attorneys like myself, and even those who are not following this, because you guys are wrapped up in this in South Carolina, give us a little backstory. So, you represented at one point, I know Stephen Smith's family too, which I want to get to down the road.
And I represent the Plyler sisters that Alex took advantage of, and he's charged with. And in these current charges, the Plyler sisters, I've represented Gloria Satterfields' sister. I've represented Jordan Jenks' childhood friend that Alex stole $125,000 from. But in this particular case, Harpootlian and Griffin negotiated a confession of judgment over 5 months. It was not only negotiated by them, the terms, but it was approved by the receiver, and then it was presented to the court by all parties. And I agreed to take that confession of judgment and not go to the front of the line. I agreed to go to the back of the line with all other victims and all judgment creditors. And then when the receiver puts the money in court, I will make an application, just like everybody else will, to see how much will come further to the Satterfields other than what we recover. And Dick Harpootlian and Jim Griffin have not only vouched for that confession of judgment, they've gotten the benefit of that confession of judgment because I've had to release my lien against a lot of real estate over the past year that Alex had to sell to raise money for lawyers' fees and to settle with the Beach family. So they've acknowledged the confession of judgment in court. They've told the judge that it's valid. The confession of judgment on its face is valid. It was given for sufficient consideration. I made no representations other than my clients will sign a covenant not to execute. And now, a year later, Dick Harpootlian is saying, I took advantage of Alex because he was drug-addled, and I took advantage of Dick and Jim because they were going in 50 million different directions. The only problem was Alex had been in jail since October of 2021. In December of 2021, he told Judge Lee, I've never been more clear in my head. I have been off drugs. I'm clear now. I can think good. I got my confession of judgment in May of 2022, where he's been in prison for 7 months, not doing drugs. So the whole thing that he was a drug addict when I got the confession of judgment is complete bullshit. And Dick Harpootlian and Jim Griffin got out-lawyered when they gave this confession of judgment, because the very next day I gave it to the ODC, and Alex got disbarred.
Amy, I'm going to let you jump in, and we haven't heard from Aimee Z yet, but Pearl's Kid writes, now that the new indictments are out, I'm wondering if Dick and Jim, Eric Bland, are going to drop their ridiculous request for the courts to vacate AM's $4.3 million confession of judgment. You know what, Eric Bland, let Aimee Z answer this because she hasn't talked, and she's shaking her head emphatically no. And Aimee Z, fill us in here. What like the inside baseball stuff? What's really going on between Eric and Dick and Jim?
I tell you, it's I see it a lot in criminal court amongst adverse parties that are just they just turn everything personal when they don't have any. So there's this old adage, like if you don't have the facts, then you pound the law. If you don't have the law, then you pound the facts. And if you have neither, you pound the table. And they are pounding the table left and right now, because I think it's a way to try to keep his name, out there. I think that, they're trying to keep this relevant. I think people were asking, wait, does this mean he gets to go to Club Fed? No, because and I have several clients that either get charged simultaneously with the similar or like different versions of crimes, state and federal. And so in order to do your federal time first, you have to plead to your federal time first. And in this case, the state charges went first. So he would have to complete his entire state sentence so they can wait 2 life sentences. And then they can put his very crusty Heine into federal prison. And so, honestly, when those federal charges came down against Corey and Alec, obviously I got a little worried too, because I'm like, oh, are they gonna throw the whole bunch in there? Knocking on wood, it's my understanding that they are not interested in dragging my client up. I certainly hope not. But I think that, like, for someone in Corey's situation, it'll probably benefit Corey much more so. I don't understand why they necessarily decided to. It's really honestly a waste of time and taxpayers' money to bring any more charges against Alec. I think that regardless of what I think about Newman as a trial judge, I do think that he made sure to make phone calls to make sure he was making the right calls, to make sure that his decision stood. And so, even if they were to, for whatever reason, vacate the state sentence, it still doesn't then bump him into federal court.
Correct.
So, I'm a little confused as to even why they're doing this. And I think a little bit of it is peer pressure. Why weren't y'all jumping in on this? But I just don't, I see it as a way to keep his name out there, a way to keep him relevant. And quite honestly, it's a lot disturbing to see them go after really personally lawyers. That's something that I've always had a huge problem with, is that when you are a good lawyer and when you, are successful and other lawyers just decide to go on the personal attack. And trust me, I've been on the receiving end of a lot of that. It really, I think, downgrades the whole profession. And it really makes me sad, because I think that we can be adversaries and still not tear each other down, because what those lawyers don't seem to realize is that they're tearing down the whole profession when they do that. And it's really disappointing.
Yeah, like Dick and Jim, I have all the respect in the world for them, where they believe that Alex didn't commit the murder, and they're defending him, and they're going to appeal it. And that's their decision. That they know the evidence more than I know the evidence. I think he's guilty, but it's one thing to say, look, we're going to see this through to the end on the murder charge. But they're going knee deep in mud on financial crime cases where they're not even getting paid. They're filing answers in the Nautilus Insurance Company case in federal court in front of Judge Gergel, where they are contending that Alex shouldn't have to give back the $3.8 million he stole from them, and Nautilus Insurance Company should go to the Satterfields and me. I should disgorge my legal fees, and the Satterfields, who got their money from Palmetto State Bank, from Bank of America, from PMPED, from Corey Fleming, from Moss Coon and Fleming, for any number of different causes of actions. And they settled for reasons that had nothing to do with Gloria's fall. Maybe for reasons that they didn't want to be associated with Alex at a defense table. And they had lawyers and they had investigators. And oh, by the way, insurance companies don't pay out millions of dollars without doing an investigation. They're not in the business of paying out money. They're in the business of fighting claims. And so Dick and Jim, in a federal court case where they're not even being paid, is telling Nautilus Insurance Company and Judge Gergel, go bring the Satterfields in this case and Eric Bland and get the money that Alex stole from them. Then in the Satterfield case, they just make a motion that says, well, we gave a confession of judgment, and we got some value out of that judgment over the past year and a half, and it was in open court. But now we've committed a fraud on too many courts, and Alex is coming clean, and we're not getting paid in this case either. And we want a court who's been defrauded by Alex to now extend their arms and vacate a judgment so that he doesn't have to now have another judgment against him. And I don't know why they're doing this. This is a lawyer that stole money, that lied to clients. He admitted to that under oath in a murder trial. So I get it that they could see his murder conviction all the way through appeals, but they're in mud now. And they're doing things that no other lawyer would do for another lawyer that stole that kind of money from clients.
So Amy Lawrence Lovely, are Dick and Jim at this point, in your opinion, more concerned about Alec Murdaugh or about exacting what appears to be retribution against Eric?
I mean, they are sore fucking losers.
Yes.
There goes the
That's
algorithm.
what I said.
Sorry.
I said they're sore losing lawyers, and what they're filing is
losers, and
they file legal toilet paper.
and they want you to pay. They are so mad that because this is what happens when you start shining light on the dark, right? When they're coming after you, that tells you you got them on the run. Because if they
Right.
got to come after you personally to try to screw, they are willing to try to screw over Gloria Satterfields like little angelic little sons. Like, do me, they're like precious little angels.
No
They
judge
are
is taking the
so-
money away from them. No
They're
judge.
so fucked up that their anger for you trumps everything that they know is right, and they're willing to look like a moron, unethical idiots to come after you because their hate for you trumps their own self-interest.
Well, you know, I won that motion 2 weeks ago where they applied to the court for $160,000 of fees to do Alex's appeal, and I went and I objected to it, and I argued
That's why
you
they're
can't
mad.
let Alex go to the front of the line. And Judge Hall denied it, and so now they have to do his appeal, and they're not getting money for it. So they're pissed as shit.
Eric, have you reached out for any reason? I mean, the obvious reason to Dick and or
Hell no.
Hell no. And are you? I'm going to ask this question because I know the answer. You're Philadelphia. You're Rocky, but are you afraid at all of dealing? These are heavy hitters in the state of South Carolina. I knew I'd get that reaction. Any trepidation on your part about
No,
going to
they've
war with
reported
these?
me to the bar twice. They've ODC'd me twice. I don't care.
What
if
does
they
ODC mean? What is that?
They filed a grievance against me, against my law license before the state governing office of disciplinary counsel. I don't mind them coming after me. This is a big boys game. We got our big boy pants on, but they're going after the Satterfields. So if they're going after the Satterfields, that's when I really mind. So if this was just going after me, fine, I can deal with it. I've made a lot of money in my life. I made a lot of money on these cases. I'll fight my battles. But you're going after the Satterfields, and that to me is personal. And I'm going to go after Dick and Jim with everything I have, with everything in my arsenal that the rules and the law let me do. And they're going to lose, and they're going to have to pay attorney's fees, and they're going to get sanctioned for bullshit motions.
You heard it here on Surviving the Survivor. Things are heating up with South Carolina in the house. Eric, my first question should have been, how are the Satterfield children doing? And to this point, have they received any money?
Yeah, they've gotten. I've recovered north of my partner and I have recovered more than $7.5 million. They've gotten over $4.5 million bucks
Of that.
So they're doing fine. They're just confused as the family is like, wait a minute, you guys sued other people. You got releases from these people. There's nothing that we represented in these agreements other than that we had the authority to execute a release and give them a release of liability. And they paid us money. Are we going to have to disgorge our money? And the answer is no. There's no judge that's going to go out on a limb and reward Alex and take the money from the Satterfields. And oh, by the way, no judge has taken my attorney's fees away. I sued lawyers to get this money. There's no judge in the world that's going to take away my attorney's fees. It's just Faulkner's idiot, full of sound and fury and signifying nothing. I said it's nothing but legal toilet paper that they wrote. It's legal toilet paper is what it was.
LTP. What about this one from Vendi Adelson Markel, which is a play on the other true crime story we're doing, and that's how my mom would pronounce Wendy with a V. What about money from his 401k? Is that tainted funds, ill-gotten gains? Is it not his really?
Correct. You can't steal $10 million from clients and live on that money and then your law firm put real income money that you get through your salary in a 401k account, and then you say, well, no, I get to take that money because it really is earned money. No, that's ill-gotten gains because you would have had to have lived on that money. He's lived on stolen money. Now he can't get the benefit of having protected funds in a 401k account. It's nonsensical.
Aimee Zmroczek, to you, this guy, Corey Fleming, who pleaded guilty today and is going to head to federal prison, and Eric thinks for 3 or 4 years, which is a nice chunk of time. The U.S. attorney was quoted as saying, trust in our legal system begins with trust in its lawyers. U.S. attorney Adair Burrows said, South Carolinians turn to lawyers when they are at their most vulnerable, and in our state, those who abuse the public's trust and enrich themselves by fraud, theft, and self-dealing will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I mean, how seriously do you take, lawyering? And are you alluded to this before, but is what Jim and Dick Harpootlian doing sort of, in essence, denigrating the profession a bit? I mean, not to this extent, but are they exposing the profession as being a little dirty?
Well, not expose. I mean, so sure, maybe they're exposing themselves, and that's the thing I think that makes me so frustrated, because I can tell you, I'm going on. I've been trying a case. I picked the jury on Monday. It started Tuesday. We got the not guilty at 3:13 or whatever. And I'm literally on 2 hours of sleep. And all I have done is work on that case and then make sure my other cases are at least, steady quote. There are good lawyers out there. And that's, I think, what's so frustrating is, I always get offended when I hear lawyer jokes and things like that, because there are people who bring down the profession. But those aren't the primary tool bags in our, those aren't the primary tools in this tool bag of bad lawyers. I mean, there are hardworking lawyers.
She represents the best in our profession. She's representing people that can't afford a Dick Harpootlian, that aren't going to get a public defender and just the public defender say, go plead guilty. This is a woman that does the investigation and says, you know what? They're overcharged, or these charges are not something that my client is guilty of. And she's putting the government to task. This is what we want in our legal system. We want defense lawyers to competently and zealously represent their clients. What we don't want is somebody like Corey Fleming, who steals from clients, who goes to a court in the Satterfield case and says in 2 separate petitions, I have $15,000 of expenses and $105,000 of expenses. In a case that was never in litigation, that there were no filing fees, and he only wrote 1 letter. That's just called stealing. And then he's also pleading guilty because he stole $27,000 from his partners. He wrote himself checks, 3 checks in 2019, one for $9,000, one for $8,000, and one for $9,000, where he said they were expenses, and he stole money from the partners. That's the kind of stuff that denigrates our profession, that makes us look bad. If you tell a lawyer joke in front of me, you're going to get a look from me, and I'm going to tell you, I don't want to hear it. Our profession is an honorable profession. Shakespeare said, let's kill all the lawyers first. Not because lawyers are bad people, but because lawyers are the one who stand up for civil disobedience and will not permit it. And he wanted all the lawyers killed because then we can run amok as a society. We keep law and order. Good lawyers do that.
I agree. Amy Lawrence Lovely, you were on Dr. Phil before Eric Bland, and so put on your psychology hat. Why the hell are people so greedy? What's going on here? Especially, Alec Murdaugh and this guy, Corey Fleming. Why such greed?
That's the one thing I never understand. I mean, I think Amy and I probably do more pro bono work than any human being should have. Matter of fact, I've got my little pro bono award from the Supreme Court because I see little old people in court and I'm like, we don't give little old people tickets. And I yell at the cop and we get them dismissed. Like, we always help everybody. We took on a innocence project and I spent $100,000 of my own money because it was the right thing to do.
Bring tears to my eyes,
Like
girl.
that's what you do. Like we're in a profession that like we don't get the luxury of having bad apples. Police officers, pilots, doctors, like we don't get to have bad apples. And so when we see them, like, because we all work so hard, and we like, I love being a lawyer. I love it. I love helping people. Nothing makes me any happier than to stand up for people, the little guy. Because when they're going up against the government or they're going up against whatever, it's always we're the little guy and we're fighting. We feel like we're fighting Goliath half the time. But when I see people like Murdaugh and Corey Fleming, it sends me over the edge because I wake up every morning really loving what I do. And so when I see people like tarnish what we do, it like sends me like I could just scream.
You know, lawyers steal money when they really need it. You know, there's a lot of lawyers that'll dip into their trust account because they're not making a lot of income. They may be doing a closing or, you know, they're going through a divorce. These guys were making millions legitimately.
Private plane, and then like just extra to charter private planes.
So Alex was making a $4 million or a $5 million fee on a rollover products liability case, and then he was stealing another $1.5 million off the top. I mean, how much money do you need?
Where was all this money going? Does anyone know where it was all going? It's still.
I mean, wasn't that the craziest thing that we saw this accountant with a gun, right? This sled agent who's like this fancy accountant, and he's like an investigator, and he got up there and like he's like, all these millions of dollars have been stolen, but no one said where it went.
So, and Alex hasn't said where it was. By the way, Alex hasn't said where the $3.8 million went that he stole from Nautilus Insurance Company that he wants me to pay.
Well, so Eric, to you, and then I want to get back to Aimee because I knew whenever I have South Carolina on, it's always wild, and I love it because it's less work for me and more entertainment for everyone else. But Shelly Jones Raposa direct messaged me on Instagram. You got to ask, and she had a lot of questions. But I have so many questions for Eric Bland. Please ask him if Dick and Jim use the craziness with Bland Richter to draw attention away from shady dealings elsewhere. And by the way, when they come after me, I'm going to need Aimee Zmroczek and Amy Lawrence Lovely to defend me. But how do you answer that? I mean, do you think
they're in the process of filming a documentary and doing their own production on Alex Murdaugh? Jim's filming it on an island, Defusky Island off of Hilton Head. So they have their own producers. They're going to make bank. This is all to create content and news and keep them relevant. Remember, Dick was pilloried for his performance in that trial. You saw a man come in like a lion and he left like a lamb. In his post-verdict press conference, he called disabled people crippled twice. And people looked at him like, dude, who are you? And then he got on the State House floor and he went on a rant about that somebody said that they wanted him to get ass cancer or anal cancer or something. Yeah. So he's been quiet. But Jim has doubled down on a lot of different stuff. And these guys are fighting for content and to somehow get themselves relevant again.
And I talked to some other people who know the case well, and they said that South Carolina Department of Corrections doesn't even want Alex Murdaugh there, and that there's other people angling to get him into federal system. I mean, Aimee, does that hold water in any way, Aimee Zmroczek?
No, I mean, they can keep trying that, but I'll tell you, if they do that for him, then I got like 19 clients that they all better do that for. You know, if they're going to take one, then they got to take them all. And I mean, I've been fighting for years to get my clients to do their federal time, you know, or in conjunction with. But to go back, I love to read the comments. And so one of the comments asked about how Eddie's doing, and he's doing very well. Thank you for asking. But to go back to where the money went. So it was a big story at the time. And maybe, Eric, you remember this. Aimee, I don't know because it was in Lexington, but there was a really big time attorney named Richard Breitbart. He was the real big first attorney that they kind of went after it that I remember. And Richard,
close with Dick, very close with
Richard, he was a good lawyer, but he was in a scam where he was just taking money from people hand over fist and got caught. And I actually got to spend a lot of time with him once he got out, because when he got out, he had nobody, and he needed some help. And so myself and Lee Levinas and a couple of other lawyers were like, we're not going to turn our backs on people that need help. How, we'll talk to you. And in that, I asked him, where, because there have always been stories about like, where did the money go? Where can we start digging to find it? And he quite honestly just said, it's honestly, I got to the point where he would throw the biggest, best Christmas parties. He would have the biggest, best stuff. And it really got to a point where he was just, it was, robbing Peter to pay Paul. And I know that the millions of dollars that are missing, it just seems like that's impossible. But when people live that kind of lifestyle, and you got to understand, it wasn't just Alec and his wife, it was Paul, who was, hand over fist spending money. And I think to some extent, probably Buster, even though Buster had a job, but you have a lifestyle that you become accustomed to, and that lifestyle is incredibly expensive. And so, I still think that I still believe that there is some money somewhere that is unaccounted for. But I think a good majority of that money was it just became a cycle, paying this to do this, and then all of a sudden needing more money. And it's really, it used to be unimaginable to me how that kind of debt could really pile up. But when you're living the incredible lifestyle that these people were living, it really makes a lot of sense. And I know that that's kind of a letdown as to like where the money is.
I think that does make sense. I've seen that
to some extent, though. He's a land baron. All these guys are land barons, which Richard Breitbart was not. Ronnie Crosby has about 5,000 acres. Mark Ball has about 5,000 acres. Alex was in a number of partnerships. We think that people are holding land in trust in name for him. So he put money up and didn't want his name on it because he knew there was going to come a time when the axe was going to fall. You can't steal millions of dollars every year and not pay income taxes on it and not think that sooner or later I can outrun it. So I think Alex knew, both with the drugs he was taking or buying, the people he was cavorting with, and the fact that he knew he was stealing money. He wasn't going to have money in his name. So they're trying to unwind a lot of transactions and look at a lot of land that's owned. Remember, again, these guys are land barons. Richard Breitbart was a very smart lawyer, and what he would do would go to vulnerable, wealthy, older people and say, the IRS, I've gotten wind, is going to come and do an audit against you. Please put money in my trust account. Put your money in my trust account, and that way it'll be protected. And he stole these people's money, but he did his time. He got square with the house. Aimee wanted to help him out. I heard he was working in an auto store or something like that. Whatever. He did his time.
Dollar General.
He did his time. But Alex hasn't done his time. Alex didn't come clean. Richard Breitbart came clean. Richard did not make the federal government try him. He pled guilty. Dick Harpootlian, by the way, just so you know, Alex is fighting every one of these cases. Every one of these civil cases, Dick and Jim have filed an answer in. Alex, even though he admitted in his murder trial that he stole all the money from these people, in every single civil trial, Alex is fighting. He's not going before the court and saying, I'm guilty, can put a judgment against me.
Yeah, I guess he needs something to do.
There's shit hidden everywhere.
Yeah.
There's shit hitting everywhere.
Aimee,
And it's coming, and it's stuff to get, which is why they're fighting.
Aimee Double L's here. Question from Sarah, which we sort of addressed, but I assume he's going to be convicted of all the new charges. When that happens, you already said he's probably not going to end up in a federal prison permanently, but can you address this? And then we will move forward from there.
I think he would be convicted of all these. He got up there and said, I'm a liar, I'm a cheater, I stole all the money. But he's fighting the civil part, so he's trying to minimize, he knows, I'm trying to think of the name. Reckoning. We're going to call it the reckoning. The reckoning is coming, and he's trying to minimize the reckoning.
But why do you think the guy is sitting in state prison the rest of his life, maybe federal for a time, who knows? But
No.
but Eric says no. But why? I mean, he's disgraced his family name, which is generations, been around generations. Why is he fighting all this and not just saying, okay, I'm a bad person, let it go, I screwed up? It's just not
because Dick is trying to get a result for him. Dick wants to beat the murder charges, then on the financial crime cases, put him in a position where he could get some kind of jail time. Either he could give cooperation in new charges against judges or lawyers or Indian chiefs, and somehow or another, the murder charge gets kicked and he ends up with like a 20-year sentence or a 25-year total sentence, pleading guilty to everything because he took down judges or took down lawyers. And then he does 17 years and he gets out when he's 70 years old. And Dick will have gamed the system. But it's never going to happen because they got Alex wrapped in barbed wire. The state has him wrapped in barbed wire, and the feds have him double wrapped.
Eric Bland from Bonnie Lee Lopez. Do you think Alec has an offshore account, and will it ever be found? That's question number one.
Yes.
Question number two is, why do some older men have hair and some don't? I actually take issue with the fact that you said older men, but you must be referring to Eric, not me. But anyway, offshore.
Eric's old. Eric's old. 61. Eric. I'm 61.
You look good, brother.
Thanks, man.
What about that? Offshore accounts?
Yeah.
He's got money stashed everywhere. He's got properties and weird trusts being held by somebody.
And that's the thing. It's not just money. It's properties and equipment. And I mean, it's things that you would never, like a normal person, even a forensic accountant would never think to look for. I agree with that. I mean, I believe that they spent a lot, but I'm telling you, yeah, I believe that it's hidden somewhere.
Have you heard that John Marvin, he was trying to get John Marvin to take the backhoe or the excavator, whatever it was on the farm. Those things are $150,000. And there's nothing owed on them. Like when you start adding that stuff up, like I think he's got stuff stashed everywhere, which is why he's fighting these civil cases.
Wouldn't you do that? If you were stealing $1 million every year from clients, you know that the reckoning's coming. No, he's not stupid, okay? He's reckless, he's a liar, but he isn't stupid. So he knows you can't get away with this forever. So he's socking money here in his brother's businesses maybe, or he's, investing in this and that. And he's got children that he wanted to care for. He knew he was going to jail. You can't steal $10 million and not go to prison. So maybe Buster knows where this money is. Is some of it buried? Is some of it in a land trust that is going to be developed as beachfront property? Who knows?
But Aimee Zmroczek, how was he doing this for so long? Because Eric just said you're going to get caught, but he didn't get caught for a really long time, and he was stealing tons of money from a ton of people. How did he get away for so long?
So I think I have to be careful that I don't, piss off powers that be. But I do believe that there's no way that you have a CFO who's supposed to be in charge of all the money and you miss $10 million. I mean, I'm a one lawyer operation. I have several employees. I have a private investigator. I have a paralegal. I have a secretary. I have, law clerks, but, and I have an accountant firm, Hobbs Group. They're phenomenal. But I have an accountant firm that handles all my money because I know that I can't do that. But they had one person that was her sole job. And so I think, to answer your question, how did it happen? I think a lot of laziness. I think a lot of just not
looking
caring.
The other way.
Yep, just not caring, because you got to understand that they were still getting, the firm, the employees, the CFOs, all of these people were still getting benefits from his behavior as well. And not just work benefits, but I mean, the you know, I think I've seen Eric there. I mean, I go to, and Aimee presented last year. I've been going to trial lawyers for 10 years now, and the parties that they put on, the dinners that they put on, the benefits that you get from that, you know, it really is frustrating to me because, again, instead of the federal government and quite honestly the state government continuing to bringing charges against the same group of people, you know, if this is truly about stopping bad behavior, then they would widen the net. And it seems it's very frustrating to me that sure we have these you know, these guilty people who we're just going to keep putting in the forefront, but you know, the attorney general's office always says, oh, we're going to bring down corruption and we're going to blah blah blah, but it seems like they then look wider, you know, because you can keep stacking charges on the same people and it doesn't solve the problem, you know, because all of these other people, firm members, partners, contributors, people who just look the other way are just, you know, and quite honestly, some judiciary have all looked the other way and received benefits and not gotten in trouble. And if we're going to clean up our profession, then clean it up, you know, take a look at all of us, turn the light on all of us. Whatever you want to call it, because just getting the same people over and over doesn't solve the problem.
By the way, Aimee Z, you said you only got 2 hours of sleep. That's a regular day for you. What are you talking about? Let's interrupt the program for 1 minute. Tons of questions. Eric, how is the new knee? So elated to see Eric back. Glad you have healed from your surgery.
Oh,
I've
that's
been praying
so sweet,
for you.
Jennifer.
By the way, that's Jersey Jennifer Castaldi, my home state, not far from you, Eric.
She's a hottie too.
How's the knee, Eric? They want to know.
It's getting there. I'm about 70% recovered. I could string 2 good days in a row and then a bad day. The problem is when you have to do PT and then exercise it blows up. So, you know, it's still a lot of icing, but I could see the horizon, which is nice. It's more than I wanted, but I could see the horizon.
And then this question to you, Eric. If Murdaugh's in prison for life and if the financial crimes go to trial, how can the victims get restitution out of him? How can he pay?
They won't. They won't. Unless the receiver that's been appointed by Judge Hall has recovered some money, but it's going to end up being, I think, somewhere less than $1 million after all the fees and everybody's grabbed at it who had to marshal it. There may be $1 million for victims and judgment creditors or somewhere in that neighborhood, but nowhere near enough to make people whole.
Joe Kelly is asking a question we've already answered. Is it really worth spending the state's money any further at this point? Everyone agrees it is not. Followed by Sally Vella. The truth should be told about his father's corruption and get his picture taken down at the courthouse, which they did during the trial. I think it was his grandfather. It's a disgrace to still have that up when he was full-fledged in corruption. So they are calling out generational corruption here. Shelly Raposa is the one who direct messaged me. Eric, do you think Alex confided in Corey about things beyond financial crimes? If so, would Corey have to divulge?
Yes. I think they're going to 302 him to death. I think he's going to be under the hot lights. They're going to put him on a lie detector. That's part of his plea. They're going to ask him everything and anything. Remember, he is one of his best friends. He is the godfather to Paul. They were college roommates. They've known each other since they were kids. Alex used to date Corey's wife, I believe. So I think Corey knows so much about Alex, not just about the Satterfield case, but so much. Remember, if there was an accident and it required 4 attorneys, Corey was always one of the 4 that would get the case. It wouldn't be the main claim. Alex would get the main claim, but Corey would be involved. So he knows so much about Alex, so much.
When his came out,
hey, Joel, I know you're not going to want to hear this, but I got to pop on. I got to go off onto another TV show at 8 o'clock.
No worries.
Is
We're going to
that
let
a problem?
not at all. I'm going to let you go. Thanks
See,
for joining us.
I appreciate it. Aimee, I'm so proud of you, and Aimee, I'm so proud of you, man. You guys make the legal profession great.
Thank
Eric,
you.
thanks a lot. Continue success with the law work and the knee. And
I'll be on it. You just ask me, I'll come on your show.
thanks, man.
Bye.
Bye. Big thanks to Eric Bland for coming on. We're gonna switch gears momentarily, but get Eric out of here. He talks too much anyway, and we'll get Aimee Z and Amy Lawrence Lovely going here for a little while. Old Lady Snoop. To Amy Lawrence, does Alec really have anything to lose? Really, is he just being a you know what at this point? It rhymes with Rick.
Yeah. Well, yes and no. Okay, so if he does have a bunch of hidden assets, and this is why he's fighting it, that makes sense to me. I don't think that maybe Dick and Jim really didn't like the way that felt, and they need a win because we did not see the best lawyer. I just really was expecting I think we were all expecting so much more. There are certain legal giants that people, and I'm talking about Dick Harpootlian, that you hear about, and when you see them, it's like I call them panty droppers, really amazing attorneys. And when you watch them, you can just listen to them talk all day long. Watch them try a case. It's exciting. You want to like take off and drive to Columbia if they're going to try something. Aimee Z is one of those attorneys, and because they tell a story and it's cohesive and there's all this stuff going on, and we didn't see that from them. I don't think they've got a chance in hell of overturning a murder conviction with that appeal. I mean, they didn't object and preserve anything for the record, which I thought was insanity. But I do think that he has hidden assets, and that's why they're fighting the financial stuff. They're not just admitting to it and doing confessions of judgment because they think the feds are going to find it.
That makes sense. Sally Vell again, to you, Aimee Z. Why isn't that bank president in prison for violating all of FINRA's laws regarding suspicious activity and all the overdrafts he wasn't charged with when other account holders were being overcharged? Is she talking about the president of Palmetto State Bank? Isn't he going to prison, or am I thinking of someone else here?
The president was a family member. Lafitte's father was the president. That's, I believe. And again, I don't know the answer. I don't know. I know that, it was a private bank. And so I don't necessarily, have the white collar knowledge unless I have to about that. But that, I think that's an interesting question. It's just, to me, that's the same question as why isn't the law firm, why isn't the former PMPED, now Parker Law Group, I think it's the same kind of question. Here's the thing. If my secretary or paralegal or private investigator or does something that screws up, guess who gets in trouble? Me, the lawyer, right? And if Amy and I were law partners and I screwed up, Amy would be in just as much trouble as I would. Mm-hmm. And so I don't have a good answer for that question. I think that's where my frustration was coming out earlier was, they keep bringing Corey, these easy targets, Corey Fleming, Corey Fleming, Russell Lafitte, and Alec Murdaugh. Those are kind of like the front line of just keep getting hit. I mean, there's only so much you can do to Alec Murdaugh. I was very disappointed when the AG put those tax charges on him because that money, all those back taxes, is going to go in front of any money any victims would get. And so it's like, you're talking out of both sides of your mouth if you're saying we're trying to protect the public and reimburse the public and blah, blah, blah. But before we do that, we're going to, tack on these charges that jumps to the front of the line of any of these questions. So I don't know why. And it's frustrating because I think that we're far enough along into this psychobabble to expand the net, and to make everyone know that, look, it's not just going to be the people that you push up. We want everybody. If you looked the other way, then you've got, I'm not saying everybody should go to prison for 100,000 years, but you've got to get some sort of penalty because then they're just going to keep looking the other way. And so I see a lot of this in the federal system. So not many people go to trial in federal cases. I mean, I do, but not a lot of people do, because what they do is they just use snitches and then they give them deals, and it just becomes a cycle. And I feel like that's where we are right now, but they're not expanding their net to get everybody that I think should be slapped on the wrist or sent to prison.
Can y'all hear me better now?
Yeah, your audio was getting a little hollow. I don't want to get either of you in trouble.
Can you hear me better?
Oh, much better.
Okay, good. I'm so sorry, y'all.
Much better. Brianna says to Eric Bland, who's no longer here to defend himself, you won't beat Harpootlian. Aimee Z, do you want to even touch that?
Beating people and things like that. It's the thing is most people don't go to trials or battles, to beat the other person. A lot of the battle is in the filings. I don't know what's going to happen amongst them, but I'll tell you what is going to happen overall. And it just continues to put a stain on our profession. And so I hope that doesn't, happen.
I think when Corey Fleming's attorneys came out and said that he was cooperating fully, and I think he said with a wide net, I think the judiciary and every attorney involved in all this mess, I think their butt puckered. And they all panicked a little and felt like they were going to throw up in their mouth. That's what I think. Because if he is cooperating and he's telling what's going down, because I think that drags some judges into it. And I think that's really what everybody's kind of afraid of with the federal investigation, because they don't necessarily have all the ties to the state stuff like everybody else does. I think that's the fear.
Janet says, Aimee Z, at what point did Jim and Poot drop Alec? When is it clear they're not going to get paid?
So I would have thought that at some point you have to cut your losses, not just your financial losses, but your professional losses. And so, I mean, in looking at, when the only I can't get inside of their heads. The only thing I can get inside of my head is that I would have, acknowledged that we tried our best, and then have somebody else do the appeal, and not triple and quadruple down. But, which leads me to wonder, is it really just about Alec, or are there, Dick Harpootlian is a very influential man. And, is he trying to protect himself or other people by staying on? I think it's a legitimate question. I'm not saying he did anything wrong, but I'm just saying when you have to look at these, it's just like Leah just said, Alec has dirt on Dick and Jim. I mean, does he? I mean, or are there other people or judges or legislators or whomever that they are protecting? I think that that's a legitimate question to ask, because otherwise I just can't imagine being so reputable for so long and then just grabbing onto this drowning cactus and just hugging it as hard as you can and just throwing little jabs out when you can. It just, to me,
something doesn't make sense. Something's not adding up.
I mean, Aimee and I have talked about this before. Like, I've said this 100 times. I don't think Jim Harpootlian, I think Jim Griffin's on his own. I think that was his friend, right? But I think that Dick Harpootlian is involved in this not because he wants to be. I think he controls the narrative, and he's the one who keeps Alec Murdaugh from dragging every fancy judiciary, every judge, every other lawyer down with him as he burns. I think that's really what Dick's purpose is. He keeps it from going off the rails.
Freedom Forecaster, this is something that I was thinking about, so I'm curious to get your reaction. I think he needs to be charged, Alec Murdaugh, with Gloria Satterfield's murder, because he said that he made up the story about the dogs, yet the 911 call was all about the dogs. What the hell? That spells out murder to me. I mean, is this going to be investigated further? Because what's the deal here, Aimee Z?
I think too much time has passed. I think that the only two actual witnesses that were present I don't think, I know the only actual 2 witnesses that were present are now deceased. And, the 3 of them, wherever they are having some afterlife conversation about this. But there's just, unfortunately, there's just there's not going to be any resolution. I don't think, one way or the other, because, so much time has passed. There's no way to go back and collect evidence, and that's why it's so important to make sure things are done right on the front end. But Alec wasn't there. The time has probably passed to even, do, geofencing on where his cell phone was at the time. I just don't think that it's probable. I just don't think that,
I mean,
I think that would be a waste of time and money.
If, and it's a huge if she was murdered, obviously you want justice for the family, but I hear what you're saying. Let's pivot here for the remaining time, and I want to get back to Cousin Eddie, but first, the Mallory Beach case. She's the young woman who died tragically. One of the bunch of people who wound up dead as it relates to this horrific story surrounding Alec Murdaugh. But attorneys now are going to get to question Alec Murdaugh after a judge ruled that this convicted murderer will be deposed in a wrongful death lawsuit filed by the family of Mallory Beach against the Murdaugh family, as well as a convenience store. Amy Lawrence Lovely, where does this lead? What will happen legally here when he's deposed in this civil case?
I mean, I think we're going to learn that, he bought alcohol for his kid all the time, that they had, a family culture that revolved around booze. And even, Paul was still drinking after this accident. Nothing. He didn't slow down. This wasn't like hitting rock bottom or, the wake up call that maybe we should all just go cold turkey and never look at alcohol again. It was like none of that stuff. They all thought that they were above the law. They all thought that they had they were coming from this sense of superiority. And it's really weird. He is a narcissistic person to the very core. I think that we didn't learn anything in that Murdaugh in the trial all those weeks is that he's the most selfish son of a gun anybody's ever seen. He was willing to kill his kid to try to save $1. And that is just is more than my mama heart can handle. I don't think it's really going to matter so much.
2 weeks after the boating accident, all 4 of them were at a basketball game, sitting on the front row, and there I was sitting not on the front row, but on the had decent seats with the daughter of a judge. She and I went together, and we looked down, and we were like, "What are you doing?"
Drinking a beer, probably.
Yeah, drinking it. All of them drinking the big giant beers, and so I think that a deposition is just another opportunity for him to spout stuff that is maybe true, not true, whatever just look at me.
Aimee Z and Amy double L's. That's your new name, Amy double L's. So at the time of the murder, Paul Murdaugh's murder, he was facing charges of boating under the influence. The big question, and I love the way you guys say it in South Carolina, has always been why. Aimee Z, have you given it more thought? Was in Alec Murdaugh's twisted little mind, was it too much? You look at him and the amount of shame and disgrace he brought on his family is ridiculous. But in his eyes, do you think that maybe Paul Murdaugh was about to disgrace the family and that was maybe a motive?
More importantly, I don't think it was in his eyes. I think it was in his daddy's eyes. I think that because but for Paul, really, Alec would have never been exposed, but for his behaviors in the first place. And understand that yes, the boat accident was obviously huge, but the thing is that he was involved. Paul was involved in a lot of things that were troublesome for the family, and the rumor has always been, that the order the order came down from from
The dad,
Handsome.
granddaddy.
Yeah, from Handsome.
Which
So
we
and unfortunately, I just don't think we'll ever know. One of the things that is most frustrating, and Aimee can tell you this, when we get criminal cases, any kind, we want to solve them. That's like, we are the best investigators ever. And the fact that we still cannot solve this is incredibly frustrating.
Sarah back, my friend Sarah, she's always a good question asker. Couldn't a forensic accountant figure all this out? That forensic accountant would have to be Einstein, basically. But Amy Lawrence Lovely, it's so convoluted, right? By the way, shout out to new member Dom's mom. By the way, 7/25. That's my birthday, so extra special. Thank you. What about a forensic accountant?
I think they could figure it out.
You
I
do?
don't think anybody wants to figure it out. That's what I think.
Interesting. Just because they're afraid of what they're going to find? Is that what it is?
I think it's tied to a lot of people that nobody wants to drag down.
Let's move it along here to Stephen Smith. We've talked about him quite a bit. Going back to the Today Show, Stephen Smith's mom was on that back in March of, I want to say 2020 or 2021. And she says, as a mother, there's questions I need to ask, and there's questions I need answers to, but I want to find out why you did it and who you are about her son's death. She still doesn't know. Recently, there were 2 POIs, persons of interest, who were named. That seems to have dropped off. Aimee Z, have we heard anything further about this Stephen Smith investigation? The body was exhumed. It seems to be going on and on. SLED is investigating, but have we heard anything? And I know you're right there in the Palmetto State. Are you hearing rumblings?
Interestingly, I was contacted last week. I was on vacation last week, but I was contacted last week.
Hold on, you take vacation, Aimee Z?
Trust me, it was, yes. It was a family vacation. I have tons of pictures. It was.
Were you able to enjoy it? I cannot imagine you on vacation. No offense.
I am lobster red. But I'll tell you, the stress of having to come back and start I came back into town on Saturday night, and I had to pick a jury Monday morning. So obviously I was still working while I was there. But
she's the goat. Okay, she's the goat.
But I got a phone call from an investigative reporter who asked me to look over some stuff that I obviously can do tonight. And it said it may and somehow be related to the Stephen Smith case. So I think that there are, I think that there is some more information coming in. Again, what the thing that breaks my heart with that is that the opportunity to gather the best evidence was when it happened, and so many balls were dropped in that case, and I think that it is I know how incredibly heartbreaking it is for this mother, or for anyone, to not to know what happened. And the thing is that we really don't do a good job in South Carolina, in my opinion, of developing cold cases and things like that, because this is a cold case. And so it's always my hope that something will come to fruition. But
I think their best bet at finding out who really did this and getting to the answer is going to be somebody getting a crisis of conscience and telling.
Michelle DeForge, I wonder if John Marvin knows where the money is, followed here by Carrie G. I like this idea. I was going to do a true crime tour this year, but instead, let's go on a treasure hunt like the Goonies. Someone says they know that the money's in the Bahamas. Be nice to find some of that.
I have a metal detector. I'm all in.
Last but not least, to touch on Curtis' cousin Eddie Smith, Aimee Z's client. What's the latest with him? What's going on?
So it came out at the status conference that we had. So we got him back out on bond. and my niece was pitching her last softball game in Florida. And so I went down to see her. And then on the way back, I ended up having to go to the ICU in Walterboro because my client was in the ICU with kidney problems. And it was really scary and really touch and go. I've been out there a few times since, and he's just trying to get his health back, and he's just very grateful to not be in jail. I am worried. I don't want him to get swept up in these federal charges, because I do believe that right now the path for him does not lead to prison in the state charges, and I would like to keep it that way if we could. So I'm very hopeful that the feds do not pick up his case.
You heard it there. Megan Baldwin, does anyone know if Alec is speaking to Buster and Randy? What I heard, that's, by the way, we had some people who spent time in prison talking about Lori Vallow Daybell, and they told me that Alec Murdaugh has a tablet with Wi-Fi. He can literally FaceTime people from his cell. I can't believe that. But do you know Aimee Z or Aimee Double L's if he's got to be in touch with his family, right?
I would have no doubt. I mean, they sat right behind him through the entire trial. And he does have a tablet. It allows them to like message back and forth and do stuff like that. So I have no doubt that he's not talking to them. And I'm waiting for someone to FOIA those so I can listen to all of them. It's going to be amazing.
That's definitely coming, by the way. So listen, I want to thank Eric Bland, who's no longer here, but it sounds like he's going after Jim Griffin and Dick Harpootlian. It's going to be interesting to see that. My guess is that right now he's on the Chris Cuomo show on News Nation, so you can catch that on the repeat. Not that, of course, because this show is far more important than Chris Cuomo's show. You know he's a friend of mine, but you should definitely be watching this, not his. And obviously, Eric Bland is representing Gloria Satterfields' family. She is the housekeeper who now seems to have fallen under even more mysterious circumstances. And Eric, of course, hosts Cup of Justice, a true crime podcast. Aimee Z, she is the owner of A.J.Z law firm. She just got another not guilty verdict today. What was that case about, by the way, Aimee Z, without revealing any attorney-client privilege stuff?
No, my client was wrongfully charged with criminal sexual conduct, basically rape, third degree, and incest. And within the hour, actually, I guess Aimee told me today, right on the hour, they came back with a not guilty verdict after a 3-day trial. So
those are serious. How much time would he have faced if he was convicted on that?
Up to 15.
And listen, and when I'm cheering for not guilty, the evidence is like the shittiest shit of shit. Okay.
By the way, this question is aimed at Aimee Double L's. Why do these lawyers have crap microphones? She says she does most of her work as pro bono, but you know what? I'm going to send Amy Lawrence Lovely a mic. Look at that mic.
I stole this one. I didn't realize I didn't have it plugged in. I am so sorry, guys. I will do better next time. I pinky swear.
No, it was awesome. And by the way, people are like, how come the South Carolinian crew aren't regulars? These guys have an open invite, but I need them to read up on other stories. So I'm going to press them to look up, study up on Brian Koberger and some of the other cases.
No, I was just in Florida, so I'm all about that Florida case.
and by the way, next week, Ann Burgess, the great Ann Burgess that the Netflix series Mindhunter is based on, Dr. Ann Burgess, I didn't know this, but she testified at the first Menendez trial on their behalf, as well as a guy named Dr. John Conti, and they're both coming on our show next week together. Doesn't get any bigger than that, and that's a huge high-profile case. So I'll let you know. We're trying to work out Monday or Wednesday. And then STS Nation, let me know. Some of you have already chimed in, but if there's some stories you want us to look at, let us know, and we will do our best to do that. I don't even know where I was. I was saying goodbye to Aimee Z and Aimee Lawrence, who are both phenomenal attorneys. But Aimee Lawrence, lovely. What craziness is going to come out of the Palmetto State next? And is the Alec Murdaugh trial, is the saga, not the trial, but his saga, is it far from over?
Oh, it's far from over. I really do hope and pray like Aimee said, like if we're gonna really clean it up, let's do it. Let's go all in. I don't know if I have the most faith that that's going to happen. But I really, it's my hope and prayer that the federal case will help kind of open Pandora's box and get people to talking.
Sky Ricky, ladies, you are simply the best. So sad. R.I.P. Tina Turner. She is a legend and will be missed, obviously. And then love Aimee and her cursey words. Aimee Z, is this far from over? But hopefully, is it over for Eddie Smith at this point?
I hope it is. I hope it's over for him. But I do believe, like Aimee said, I do believe it's far from over. But I wish that they would. I wish that they would throw the net a little higher,
wider,
higher and wider.
Higher and wider, and see what they can catch in that net. Well, listen, huge thanks to Aimee Z and Aimee double L's, and we got to get Lonnie back on the show, Amy Lawrence and Aimee Z, and
my BFF, Lonnie.
Yes, and we can talk. By the way, her book is right here somewhere about parenting. But we'll get you on, and we'll discuss some other cases too, if you want to do that.
We'd love to.
And Aimee will keep her mic plugged in. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Until next time, love you, America. Love you, South Carolina. And love you, everyone in between. Until next time.